Good evening, happy Monday to you, to everybody who struggled in the morning to get to work, to Kopa Moja. Hopefully it gets better with time, but hope you've had a good start to your week and you had an even better weekend. So today being a Monday, looking at current affairs, we touched on this about 2 months ago, but we're still continuing the conversation to keep tabs on what's been happening and the developments so far. We're talking about corruption and how you and I can do business in this country without compromising ourselves. Also looking at other aspects as well. And I have two amazing gentlemen to have that conversation with me. We have Professor Isaiah Wakindiki. Karibu sana, sir. We also have somebody who I need to go in the Senate. I'm not endorsing him, but I need him there. And that's a Python who's a civic educator and also an aspiring politician. Ukianza kuranu tuambie unaran wapi? You will let us know because you're a friend to the family officially. So let us know when you're running. Karibuni sana.
Thank you so much.
So I'll start with the professor. How we are tackling corruption, arresting what we'd call quote-unquote high-profile people, going after everybody, not caring who they are related to. Are we doing it the right way?
Whether arresting people is the right thing or tackling corruption, are we doing the right thing? I think we are attempting. We are attempting, and any attempt is a good thing.
Okay.
To answer you. But I think to take you back, it's good we have a common understanding of what is corruption.
Yes.
Yes, because we tend to associate thieves with corruption. There is more to corruption than just stealing.
Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So for the benefit of our listeners and our viewers, I think we better understand that when somebody is put in a position, whatever position, you are put in trust and you use that authority or that power for personal gain, then that's corruption.
Okay.
If you are in charge of a kitchen and you start making tea without authorization, that is corruption. It doesn't have to involve a CS or a PS. No. So that's what I want our viewers to get, that when we talk about are we in the right direction, yes, we are attempting, but there's more to be done.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you'll be telling us what can be done on that front. For you, you know, I keep saying, like the president gave an interview a couple of days ago and said that he's trusting the judiciary to deliver convictions for the cases that we have in court.
Yeah.
Will that happen?
Yes, I'm very optimistic about it. The challenge about these crimes and these corruption cases is we have intelligent men and women who have covered their steps. And so, you know, we know, the public knows they're out there. We know they stole a lot of money, but the law states that one is innocent until they are proven guilty. And so that's where the challenge is. And if the prosecutor doesn't have enough evidence, that's the law, they will go scot-free. And so we can't blame the judiciary when we see them walking scot-free because there was lack of evidence. Theirs is to deliver their judgment, and it's the work of the director of prosecution to give the evidence. So we can't really fault the judiciary. I think it's just enabling the DPP's office and equipping it so that they can have enough evidence, because they will still walk around and we know they are guilty in the public's eyes, but not in the eyes of the law.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now let's go back to the basics as Professor had directed us. And now to the corruption, ile chini kabisa. So I'll give you an example with today. A young man is trying to get to the office. There are no matatus on the road. He gets a ride from somebody with a personal car. The person charges him 200 bob. What he'd ordinarily pay 50 bob or 80 bob. And I thought, guy, we are trying to fight corruption, people. Why would you charge that? Do you think it's trickled down to every Kenyan? And then I'll come to Professor. Has it trickled down to everybody?
Yes. There is grand corruption where it involves high-profile government officials, but there is petty corruption where we have middle or low-level public officers. But as long it's Number one, it's the nature of us human beings to want to enrich ourselves. It's in our nature, and everyone has a potential of being corrupt.
Okay.
It's not just a person in office alone. Everyone has a potential of being corrupt themselves. But the difference is there is like professor who has values and principles, and whether given an opportunity to be corrupt, he would say no because of the values and the principles that he holds. But if Python doesn't hold any values or does not stand on any principles, of course I will fall for any corruption or any illegal behavior, because it doesn't mean anything to me as long as I'm enriched myself. So corruption is actually a means to an end. I use it because either I'm selfish, I'm greedy, I don't care about the person who's paying that 200 shillings, because I just want to enrich myself. Yeah.
Okay, I hear you. Professor, do we have morals and values as Kenyans? Because we keep saying we'll do this through the legal system, but it's also a moral issue. So is it possible to actually tame it at the very lowest level, like the example I've given, where you'd overcharge somebody because there are no matatus?
Yeah, we Kenyans have morals, Kenyans have values, but then what are the standards, and who is keeping this code, the code of morals and values? We have a constitution that spells the national values of Kenyans, but if you ask even the educated Kenyans, what are our values? Zero.
Okay.
They're not aware, or they're not interested. So as we tackle corruption, let us know that corruption has many facets. There is the political corruption,
Yes.
economic corruption, social corruption. And when you talk about morality, you see, we have to address corruption now in that context. So it's like we are moving from one sphere to another. We can address social corruption in itself, or political or economic, etc.
Okay.
Your question specifically addresses how corrupt are we morally, okay? And that one remove politics, remove economics, and we look at ourselves as a society which is guided by norms and our traditions and our values. In my considered opinion, they are well forgotten.
Okay.
I think, as my brother has just alluded to, I think the greed that is permeating this country has done a bad blow to our customs, to our morals, to our values,
Okay.
as they were. Yeah.
Okay. Professor, let me follow up with this. Because you're saying where we are at now, meaning we were at a better place at some point. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like any other society that is developing, we must have been somewhere.
Okay.
Where, for example, in terms of our moral standing, it was almost near perfect. When we were, at equilibrium with nature, then capitalism came in. And remember, our chiefs were introduced to mirrors and blankets. This was, the beginning of corrupt practices.
Yes.
That if I'm a chief, I will have a mirror. Recently, I visited Kumasi in Ghana, and I went to the palace. They still have their traditional kingdoms of the chiefs there. And one thing that I was taken to see was an old television set that was donated by the royals of London, way in the colonial era. I want to imagine that was a piece of bribery. So you can see the seed of corruption being planted in a traditional kingdom, which was the custodian of values in Ghana. So likewise, that's how our, institutions were eroded with these, tokens and gifts and corrupt practices that, infiltrated into our systems. And that's why I'm saying that when we stand to be counted on the moral aspects and our values, we must be ranking low from where it was those days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm quite ashamed given we are the young Kenyans. So let me ask you, what do you make of people who will say, yes, we are Christians, yes, we're trying our best to survive, but it's the order of the day in Kenya to do things that way? What do you make of that?
That is the order of the day to...
It's the order of the day to, bend a little, talk to somebody there, give somebody a call, because they're trying to do it the right way, but they feel like it's not working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see the frustration. I also realize that we also have a role to play because if my car has a problem on the road and I don't want the inconvenience of going to the police station, answering questions, so I will pay 200 shillings. So we have ourselves to blame because, as you say, it has become the norm of the day because we want to proceed with life. We don't want to be held back with barriers, having to be answerable to somebody. And so what we end up doing is that it becomes acceptable. So like in many government offices, even the government itself has shown us that you have to give something if you want a service, whether it's a public institution, whether you're in a ministry office, you have to eat unconsciously. Even without being asked, you know that you have to give because, if I don't give a bribe of maybe 1,000 shillings, the file I'm looking for will take like 1 year. And so I'm just trying to fasten the steps. So also us as the citizens, I know it's our responsibility, but we have also been pushed to the wall. And part of the blame is the government itself.
Okay.
And if the government was on the front line of fighting corruption, especially in public institutions, I think we'll also support the government and telling them such and such cases of corruption are happening. But when I see that there's nothing being done, I'll also give up. I'll also give the 200 shillings and we just move on with life. So I think the failure of government in the fight against corruption has also made us so complacent that, if the government doesn't care, then even me as a citizen, I won't care because I'll just pay 200 shillings as long as I get the services that I need.
Okay.
Yeah, so partly the government to blame and also us, the citizens, to blame.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's somebody who asked me, how do you differentiate a bribe and a token of appreciation? And I'm like, it's such a thin line. Some will say it's what you give before the service and the other is what you give after the service. Professor, please help us. What is the difference?
The difference is just as you have said. One is a token, the other one is a bribe. Simple. But
okay.
On a more serious note, you see, bribery is just one aspect of corruption. There are other forms of corruption that are, rampant and practiced on daily lives of an ordinary Kenyan. Bribery is the most common one, where and some departments, it's now, as you're saying, it becomes a tradition. We have other forms now, especially with economic crimes of corruption that involve embezzlement, okay? Where, senior public servants are just involved in embezzlement of public resources. With abandon, they just don't care. That is a category of corruption itself. It's not a bribe, but they're just embedded into. Now, we used to talk about millions. They're not millions anymore. Yeah. It's billions every morning. And it becomes like a way of life when it shouldn't. There is also another category of fraud, okay?
Yes.
Where, people placed in positions of authority are involved in frowned, enormous frowned.
Yes.
You hear certain officials have gone abroad and they have made fictitious claims and all this kind. It's not bribery, it's not embezzlement, but this is fraud now.
Yes.
And all public officials who are running 20 accounts all over in the banking sector, where they are depositing money from potatoes, from chicken, and from very handy working wives. You remember the era of vetting. when there were a category of women who were very hardworking.
Very.
They would sell eggs and deposit millions of shillings
Yes.
in a matter of hours. So that's where we are as a country. We're involved in grand corruption of every shade. That's what I would say.
Okay.
From bribery to embezzlement to fraud. And this thing you are talking about appreciation. In terms of corruption language, I would talk about inducement fee.
Okay.
You understand? It's
Yes.
not a bribe. But I come over here and I tell you that since I want to benefit whatever benefit I perceive from appearing here, I give you something and expecting you to do something in return. A token of appreciation, you don't expect anything in return.
Okay.
It's like when you give to a beggar on the street, you don't expect the beggar to do anything. You just donate and you move on. But if you are given this token, expecting that person to reciprocate, then it's corruption.
There you go. Yes,
Yeah.
you wanted to say something?
Yes, actually, on that bit of that token of appreciation, I think there are laws concerning it that if I'm given something, I either reveal it or just hand it back to show that me as a public servant have been given this and I'm handing it over to the ministry or to the agency. But if I keep it and then, as Prof says, it's like I'll also be liable and it will be required of me to continue giving that person more tenders and more contracts because of that token of appreciation. So if it's something that's binding me, then to me, my conscience wouldn't be clear. But if it's something that I'm given and I give to the agency and it has no regard or no connection between either the tenders or the office I'm working with, then that's okay.
Okay.
Yes.
I hear you'll also be asking whether we should have our public servants or state officials work with the government. But first, we listen to the song by Crowder. Then we have an amazing one from Giuliani, and then we'll continue this conversation. A song there that talks about some of the issues we're trying to tackle here, which is corruption, system injustices, and that's Giuliani with that song Utawala. We're live on Family TV, also live on Family Radio, hanging out with Professor Wakindiki and Pithon, who's a civic educator. And gentlemen, iko kazi ni mingi. So I had asked you this earlier, and they said, please explain to the audience, should public servants who work for the government or state officials do business with the government? That conversation has happened, but nobody seems to give a clear answer. Should that happen?
A quick answer is no.
Okay.
Way back, because we inherited our current democracy from our colonial masters, remember, at independence, a civil servant was not supposed even to own a kiosk. It was illegal. And that discipline was maintained. You couldn't be a policeman and own a matatu. It wasn't there. Then, after about 10, 20 years, things started loosening up. Why? Because the political elite who had been introduced to the monetary economy of salaries wanted a way of showing off in the villages. And this is where our social networks, the socialization of the poor Africans, of pulling together was hijacked by the political elite of the day. It took about 10 years of independence. So that with the salaries they were earning, they could rush back to the villages and tell people, come, we build dispensaries. But you see, the poor rural folk, they only had the chicken and the eggs and the few coins that were circulating in the village. And this person would come with the money from the city. So it became fashionable that there is a place you get money somewhere in the city or in the civil service where you bring it to the village. And as the demand increased, okay, then these civil servants and to look for ways to maintain their ATMs. Because whereas really I congratulate my brother here for expressing interest with politics.
Yes.
Politics in Kenya today, for to win a Senate seat, which covers several constituencies,
Yes.
and where everybody thinks that you are an ATM, they don't care where you are getting the money from.
Okay.
Remember what we said corruption is?
Yes.
Is when somebody is put in a position of authority or power and they use it for personal gain. Go back to our constitution. Who is the sovereign in this country? It is the people.
The people.
So during elections, everybody becomes so meek because they know who the voter is. And because the voter now knows it's my time, they use that position not to exercise any democracy, but to extort the politicians, because they have the power. Yeah, you understand?
Yes.
So when that's why I say this thing of corruption, and we say it is those who are in those, it's any Kenyan, give a Kenyan a position of authority, generally speaking, they will look for ways of benefiting from that position, right from those who are in the rural areas. Forget about those who are in the newspapers and in TVs having embezzled funds and fraud and all this stuff.
Okay.
So what I would say in a nutshell is the corruption enterprise has become deep-rooted in this country.
Okay.
It's an enterprise, and we are all participants.
Okay.
You asked my colleague about Christians. Christians are part of Kenyans. Unfortunately or fortunately, I am one of them. I'm a Christian. And what I see a majority of my compatriots doing is they have become dual citizens. You know, in this country, you know, or any other country, there are rules of who is a citizen. And there are ways to acquire that citizenship. So when you declare yourself to be a Christian, you are a citizen of some form of a family of believers.
Yes.
And there are rules and guidelines to belong to there. But a majority of us who confess that faith are actually suppliers of corruption in this country. Therefore, at that point when they are exercising that, I say they are dual citizens.
Okay.
They are using the other passport. And you know, when you are a dual citizen, anything can happen. And you can be taken to the airport anytime. And
Professor, I can read your mind. I can clearly read your mind. Ethan, same question to you, and he's also moved into the Christian aspect as well, but maybe to the first one. Do you think public servants, state officials should do business with government?
No, also to me, it's a no.
Okay.
I think it's also giving an opportunity to people elsewhere to equally distribute resources. So if I have a job, I still want a tender and do business, so what will you get? I think it's a question of being also selfless and just being content with what you have. At the same time, also not compromising on the quality of the work, because if the person in charge of a ministry of roads and I'm getting the tender, I don't think I'll be accountable to anyone because I'm the one giving the job and I'm the one doing the job. So I think we will end up having so many compromised projects and roads and everything, and I don't think it will work best for the ordinary mwananchi because everything will be compromised. So to me, it's a very strong no.
Don't you think it also works against those who are trying to tame or fight corruption? Because if I'm going to do this and Python is my friend and he's in it, Professor is my uncle, he's in it, then what power do you have to call it out? Does that make sense? That's where my worry is. Yeah.
Yes, because if it's somebody else doing it professionally, I will gauge him by the quality of the work, not based on our friendship. But if it's Medrin doing the job, of course, friendship will come first and then work will come later. So it also compromises to a bigger extent. Yeah.
And now to the second thing he touched on, I was actually going to ask that.
Yes.
Have we Christians entertained corruption? Because we are 80% of us are Christians.
Yes.
Here, have we sort of allowed for it to happen?
I think you're saying 80% Christians, but how many have a relationship with Christ? Yes, 80% go to Sunday every church, but how many are true disciples of Christ? It's less than 10%, sorry to say. So, yes, but basically I'm saying we shouldn't generally expect too much from the people who call Christians, because some of us, we are Christians because we have a Christian name or because we go to church, but really we don't have that relationship with Christ.
Okay.
So expecting Python to be a person of integrity because every day he goes to church or he gives his offering and tithe, I think that would be a wrong judgment.
Okay.
The judgment should be based on how I carry myself from Monday to Friday in my workplace. Am I reflecting Christ? So yes, the church has enabled, as Christians, we have enabled corruption to a certain extent. I think number one, when we allow politicians to come on the altar and to give money to these big projects that we have, not putting in mind where they have gotten the money from, I think we are compromising. I'm not saying it's bad. If I'm a politician at my home church at St. Andrew's Old Stadium, and that's where I worship, I can give to the many projects the church will. But if I'm just going across the nation to churches because I know they have big projects, I think the church should put also a governor, and they should not allow each and every other politician to come and speak on the altar, because our services have been turned into political arenas, and to some extent we have endorsed these people and also their lifestyles, because basically what we are saying, if we are able to invite a corrupt politician to our churches, we're endorsing him and we're endorsing also his lifestyle, and it basically means that we have no problem with where the money is coming. And then secondly, if we don't go into governance and leadership and politics and leave it to the bad folks, we can't always complain. Yes, we're enabling corruption because we're inactive. Yes, I know the church has played a big role, especially holding media conferences and, either addressing issues on corruption. But I think we have an opportunity even to go ahead, not only to air our views as the church. I think the church needs to take its step into politics 100%, because all the good people, all the servants that we know we can trust them with public resources, they're not anywhere but in the church itself. So apart from praying for the nation of Kenya, I think the church should also engage itself actively by nurturing young people who are believers and who are accountable to the church, and putting them in strategically in places of authority and in places of governance. Then we shall see corruption going down, because we know that these are Christians and they are entrusted not only with riches, heavenly riches, but also with earthly riches. Okay. So yes, we have enabled, but we have an opportunity because we have the majority. We are the majority, and I think the church can do better. We can still do much better.
I like that aspect, pushing a church, pushing a leader, because then pastor can call you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And ask you, what are you doing, Bana?
Yes.
Yeah.
And because they are the ones who have given me that platform, they have nurtured me. Of course, I'm able to be accountable to them. But if it's a politician from nowhere who is not accountable to anyone, he will not even give a thought or an ear to what the church is saying, because the church has no place in his or her life. But if it's me, Python, how can I dare go against my provost or my deacon or my pastor who has seen me from my childhood to my teenage life to my youth? I think that will be so rare. So I think we have an opportunity as Christians, and I think we need just to up more our game in order for the corruption levels to go down.
Okay. Even me, I'll come for you if I hear any story. I am coming for you. We also asked the same question to Kenyans and asked them, do you think us as Christians that we've allowed or enabled corruption? They shared their thoughts, so watch and just listen to this.
Yeah, actually, I think that is true. Yeah. In most cases, actually, corruption thrives mostly in the church than outside. Yeah. So I think, they have promoted corruption.
Somehow, I think our pastors are somehow contributing on corruption. You need to contribute something to be done for something, like prayers, weddings. maybe you bribe them, some also things like that.
Corruption is something that is of national, it's like a national disaster. And I think as much as Christians, I agree with the fact that they are trying to fight it, but I think they are not doing enough to fight corruption. For instance, I remember there are some countries whereby I think like the DRC, Congo, you will see there is the religion is actually mobilizing citizens so that at least they can, so that they are pressurizing the government. But when you look here in Kenya, I think as much as they are trying, but they have not done enough. We need to see more from our religious leaders.
I don't think that Christians have promoted corruption, because corruption comes from our African traditions of appreciation. In the Christian world, people might confuse it with appreciations, but I don't think Christians have promoted corruption, because it talks in the Bible that corruption is not good. It's a bad thing.
Yeah, that's very true. Christians have promoted corruption in this country, and the biggest people who are promoting it is their leaders in the church, because you have seen church leaders, pastors, they are accepting money which comes from corrupt individuals in their churches. When you meet a pastor receiving 10 million from a politician without even asking the source of this money, we need to ask hard questions. And as Christians, our role, because I'm also a Christian, our role is to ask these questions to the government. Our role is to be like Desmond Tutu, who challenges the government, not people who are sycophants.
When you go to church, we give offerings as a willing. Okay, you don't find people stealing to give offerings, because even when you steal money, you'll find it difficult to give it back to church, yet you stole it. Then we find that some Christians, they've created like some, I don't know, groups or what, but they use those groups to fight things like corruption, as in they say that it's not a good thing. They encourage people not to do corruption. So I don't think they do anything with corruption. Christians.
Amazing song there. We're live on Family TV, also live on Family Radio, still trying to tackle this thing called corruption. We'll have this conversation till we have a solution, because sababu kuna mchezo mahali. And Prof, when you watch the couple, the young people who are talking about what corruption is, one was saying, it's the pastors, and you said, I need to make it very clear for every listener and viewer. Go ahead.
Yes, we have to understand I said at the beginning of the show what corruption is. It's not bribing somebody. It has other aspects. The ideal definition of a Christian, I said, is a believer of one Lord Jesus Christ. Christ was never, is never, will never be corrupt. And therefore, if you belong to that category, then you describe yourself as a Christian. But I'm saying a majority of us who are in that description of being Christians have also succumbed to acquiring another passport for another country. That's why I'm calling them dual citizen Christians. They belong to another category. And these are the problem in the churches. They include from the church leadership to the followers themselves.
Okay.
There are three messages being preached in our churches today. Mm-hmm. Majority of the churches. Wealth. How you're going to make money for doing zero. They call them miracles.
Okay.
God forgive them.
Yes.
Second, Christ himself taught us to work. But now is miracle will happen. You'll be wealthy. You'll be second, good health. Come here, those who have cancer, who have what miracles will happen and the cancer will disappear. Please go to hospital. The third message is that of promotion at the workplace. You'll be promoted after you whatever. And all these messages are tied with so long as you bring your money. Did you remember what I talked about fraud?
Yes.
This is fraud in the church room. This is at the end of the day, when all these monies are collected.
Yes.
Who is the accounting officer? The so-called pastor. At the end of the day, it's embezzlement. So I would say these people with the dual passports, they are involved in fraud. They are also involved in embezzlement.
Okay.
And the rest of us who patronize those places are equally as guilty as charged. As the so-called pastor, even you, who is going there to receive all these things, is also as corrupt. So let's get that one very clear. And I would say thank you so much to those Christians around the country who have only one passport. There are, I don't have the statistics, but we have genuine Christians with a single state passport. You can't deport them. But these others, I'm telling you, their time is coming. They'll be deported.
Pithon, same question. Prof is hilarious. Same question, just a reaction to the video that we've watched.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just to say that what a few young people mentioned that corruption it blooms a lot because of absence of punishment. Let me say two things: because of lack of values and the erosion of values, as one mentioned, of our traditions and how we were, but also number two, the absence of punishment and the absence of the law in terms of if I see my friend Prof has been convicted, even if I see an opportunity to engage in corrupt activities, I will not, because I know that corruption does not pay, that corruption is punishable. But as long as I'm seeing people walking free, then to me, corruption is it's a short route to riches and wealth. I also want to say I think we don't know the effects of corruption. I wish people knew the effects of corruption. That corruption, number one, it denies people, their rights, from education to hospitals to clean water to housing. And that's why our government is having a hard time, because most of the monies that have been embezzled to do good projects for the community have been routed to, personal pockets, and people are suffering. People have lost their dignity. People live in slums, not because we don't have money. There's a lot of inequality, because the more people get rich and the more they become selfish with their lives, the more the poor are getting more poorer. There's a loss of opportunity. I wish we knew what corruption does. But, when we are covered with selfishness, we don't get to understand what my neighbor is going through because of my acts of corruption. To me, I'm enriching myself, buying a big car and buying a big house, but I've denied somebody else's life. I've denied education to her children. I've denied him to putting food on the table. So I think when we have that conscious awareness, not at our age, but from an early childhood, that from class 1 nursery I'm taught that these are the effects of corruption and these are the rewards of integrity and walking a godly life, then we will miss it. So as Prof said, it's not a fight that we will win overnight, instantly.
Okay.
It's something that will take this government and the next government and even to the next generation, so that we don't we are not engaging in corruption because we fear, but because it's embedded in us. We can fight corruption because we are fearful, so we're not engaging in corruption because I'm afraid that I'll be executed, but I'm saying no to corruption because it's in my value system. And as he said, Article 10 of the Constitution that talks about those values, we actually don't know those values. And I think even before prosecuting people and taking people to court, I think the sustainable way is going to our children and the young people and teaching them these values.
Okay.
And I think that will be more sustainable.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hear you. There's somebody who's giving a comment to what Prof said in regards to dual citizenship. And they're saying being called Peter or Paul does not equate to being a Christian. There's a wrong notion that any black non-Muslim man or woman is Christian by default. Kenya is not 80% Christian. Hey, Nimekusikia, my brother. Thank you for watching. Also, Fresha, you're watching. Asante sana. We also have Ndongo, you're watching from Gilgil. Thank you as well. So, Prof, moving forward, here's what we need to do. Tell us.
Thank you so much. Moving forward, Kenyans, let us learn that corruption, with whatever shade it comes, whether it's embezzlement, whether it is frowned, whether it's a bribe, anything, if you are placed in a position of power, in a position of authority, discharge that office or the duties of that office with all the honesty that is entrusted in you.
Okay.
Avoid shortcuts. Corruption is equal to death. It's corruption that is failing our health sector. It's corruption that we don't have good roads, and that's why we are dying there. It's corruption that is denying us basic housing facilities. That is why part of our society is generation to generation condemned to slums forever, etc., etc. And therefore, corruption is banned for our own existence.
Okay.
And therefore, we should run away from it. We don't have to be told by anyone. Let us fight it from an individual point of view and from wherever you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hear you. Moving forward, mimi acha nikwambie, I am rooting for you because I know your ethics and I know what you stand for.
Yes.
So what are we
Thank
telling
you.
young people?
So what we're telling young people is that if we don't attend to the fight, or if we don't enroll, or if we don't hear the battle cry, corruption, and there's a parable that Jesus gave in the Bible and says there was a man who planted wheat, but the enemy came at night and planted weeds. And so if we are not aware and if we are not engaging in the fight against corruption, corruption will continue to grow. And the more it continues to grow, maybe it's not affecting me at this particular time, but 10 years down the line, when my daughter or when my son needs medical attention and there's no funds, then I will bear the consequences of corruption.
Okay.
So I'm saying that it affects all of us. And moving forward, where we are at, as Prof said, whether I've been entrusted with that kitchen and I need to be faithful with the sugar and the tea, whether I am a farmer, I'm distributing maize, or whatever position I am in, doesn't mean that I have to be a public officer so that I work in integrity. Even me as a student, wherever we are, let's work as people and men of integrity so that others may see what we are doing, so that we may act as a role model, and also for them they will serve as a role model. And I believe in the few years to come, I think we will have changed also our mentality and also our ways of life.
Okay.
Yeah.
And thank you, gentlemen. I like what you say, that there are people who are doing right. And I was telling you earlier, there's a gentleman who we interviewed on radio today. He does business the kingdom way, and it works. So it actually works. Prof. Isaiah Wakindiki, Pithon Muchoki, asanteni sana. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you as well for watching the show. Tomorrow we'll be here with another topic 6 to 7, radio 4 to 6. And don't forget to tune in to Jump 316 in the morning. Have a good night.